Hello lovely people and welcome. Thank you so much for visiting my channel today. Today I am starting on a project I've been thinking about for a while, and that is to do watercolor and ink drawings of all of the various places I've lived that I remember in my life. And I thought this would be a lot of fun for a number of reasons. One, just for the trip down memory lane, thinking about each place I've lived, what it meant to me, and what I remember from living there. And also it gave me a chance to go on Google Earth and bop around and look at the places where I lived and see what they look like now. And in fact, all but one of them is still standing, still looks pretty similar to what I remember it as. So that was kind of cool. And the one place that is no longer there, I was still able to find some reference photos from a little while back. So that was cool. So in general, what I'm doing is I am starting with a sketch, and then I'm doing that on just regular sketching paper because I don't want to sketch my preliminary sketch on watercolor paper because the erasing will damage the paper. So once I have the preliminary sketch, I used a light box to transfer the finalized version onto watercolor paper, and then I used ink pen to ink that basically. And then I went in and I'm doing a whole lot of glazing here. I'm doing many layers, with the exception of the sky, which I put in all at once. The rest of it I'm doing lots and lots of layers, and I'm starting by building up kind of flat colors, and then later on I'm going in and texturing it. For the apartment buildings themselves, I textured using salt, putting down a layer of paint and then putting some salt in it and letting that do the texturing. For the grass, I used a toothbrush and kind of spattered very fine paint on it. But those are only in the final layers. So what you see here is the very preliminary layers, and then I work my way through adding in. And then I also add some more details with the pen as I go along. And overall, this was my second attempt. The first attempt went very badly, but I learned from that, and so I went through and just kept working on it until I liked the way it looked. It's really interesting. It really does look like my memory of it, which is kind of cool. So this is the first place I ever remember living. I'm not sure exactly how old I was when we moved into this apartment building. But we moved out when I was 8. So I think I was probably 3 or 4, because there were a couple of places we lived before that, but I have absolutely no memory of them. And so like I said, we lived here until I was 8. My brother was born when I was about 7, and that I think is why we moved. We needed a bigger apartment. But I don't have a whole lot of memory from this building. I remember looking out the window of the apartment and seeing the very distinct pattern of the sidewalks and the grass down underneath it. And I remember I learned how to roller skate when we lived here. And there was a parking lot next door to this apartment complex. And I was, I don't know, 5 or 6, maybe 7, yeah. And I roller skated back and forth on the sidewalk in front of the parking lot, going from my mom to my dad, and then back to my mom, and then back to my dad, back and forth until I felt comfortable roller skating. And then after that, I would roller skate around and around all the little kind of figure eights and shapes I could do in this little sidewalk setup. I actually think I got yelled at by one of the neighbors for doing that. They didn't like that, but you know, I was a kid. And it was fun. So yeah, that's, I think, my main memory of living in this building. Very little. A couple of other tiny things, sitting in the living room playing with some toys or something, but really very few memories. I don't have very strong memories from when I was that young. But this was a great deal of fun to paint. I have not done a lot of work in watercolor involving this many layers, and it was really good for me to practice learning how to glaze and slowly build up color so that I got a nice variation. You can see the salt there. That's when I started texturing it by using salt. You let it dry and then you take off the salt and you have some interesting texturing underneath that. And I did 2 layers with the salt on the apartment buildings, and then it was kind of what I wanted it to be. And here I'm just putting in little shadow bits underneath each window. I'm starting to work on getting some variation and more texture and realism and realisticness into the painting. And of course, each time the watercolor dries a lot lighter than it is when you put it down, so it's always lighter than you think. And then there I was just using the paintbrush to spatter in the grass, and using a toothbrush to spatter in the grass, and then using the paintbrush with just water on it to clear the extra spatters off the sidewalk areas. Then I went back in with this pen and ink to put in the fire escapes that I very much remember. Add those in, and I think those help a lot in making the buildings look much more dimensional and realistic. And after that, I had some supervision here from the cat. That's Nicola on the left there. And then I went back in with another layer of color and salt because I didn't like the texture quite enough. And I'm being careful to go around the windows there. That actually was the kind of most annoying part, was trying to keep the windows clear, and then let it dry overnight, and then came back and took the salt off, and then started working on the shadowing, putting a bit of shadow behind the fire escapes there, darkening the shadow around the plants. And when I lived there, I remember there being these really big trees, but I think they were elms, and I think they died of Dutch elm disease at some point. They certainly aren't there anymore. So that's a pity. But now there were just these little bushes spotted around, and I didn't put them exactly where they are in the real thing. They're just giving you the feeling. And yeah, I really like this piece. Anyway, here's the final, and as always, thank you so much. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, be well, and if you like this, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you so much. Take care.